Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope everyone's enjoyed their day one at Tech Days so far this year. For those of you who do not know me, I am an American who relocated to Sweden. I became an MVP, so I, oddly enough, for a year had the track record of the only Nordic BC MVP, a little odd thing. But during that time, I wrote a book, Your First 20 Hours with Business Central, great little getting started guide. Still proud of that one. A number of people have reported it helped them pass the MB 800, so enjoy that. And earlier this year, a good friend of mine, AJ Kaufman, we wrote the API reference guide together. So if you need to work with the Business Central APIs, super helpful. I have also participated in the project of alguidelines.dev. I hope you guys have seen that, have visited that, taken a look at some of the rules and design patterns. There's lots of good info there. I also released for free a licensing application that partners can monetize their app source apps, including little indie dev shops with just one guy. So if you have a cool little idea, use it. It's free and it's open source. And if you just want to show your BC love, there's wallpapers you can grab for free as well. And last little about me thing, there's also a community newsletter you can sign up to. This does a roundup of all the blogs of the community, well north of 100, approaching 200 different sources. If there's new posts, you can go grab the info from that. It will send emails weekly and just give you what you need to know. So, let's get to the good stuff. First of all, one of the things that I like to do is I like to cook. But one of the best practices when it comes to cooking is you get everything together, get everything prepared. And so we're applying that philosophy today of I'm making sure that we have the right foundational knowledge to move forward. So we're going to go back a little bit to a couple of design principles because we're going to get weird, and it helps to start with a shared foundation when we go a little weird. So originally, once upon a time, a VAR would demonstrate the product to a customer. A salesperson would show what they needed to do, maybe what the gaps were. A project manager would come along with their consultant, and they'd try to figure out what all do we need to do for an implementation. And they might rope in a developer to say, okay, we need to customize this to be able to implement it. Okay, not too bad. And after go live, we hand it to a support person who's generally horrified by the job of the previous team. Some of you are going, oh, you have support people. How nice for you. That's me. Okay, fair enough. And then there are other people who work for ISVs who create products. And that flow is you gather requirements, hopefully. They might be from a live customer, but you gather requirements from users, you grab the requirements from the stakeholders, and then, of course, you put together the solution with a product manager and development effort. Pretty straightforward. And then historically, the delivery was you would install that for the end user. Good old FOBs, way back long ago. Some of you might not even know FOBs anymore. That's fine. So not to horrify anyone and bring up some history and open scars, but in the before times, back in the financial days, there was one development environment. There was a single IDE, it was one language, and we had one way of presenting things on the screen. Forms. They weren't even pages yet, so if you don't know forms, welcome to the history times. There was everything you needed to develop was just on the CD, with the exception of the license file, which was on a floppy. Well, if you are one of those folks who grew up in these times, you're probably feeling like, whoo-hoo, the modern world is great, but there's an awful lot of stuff. You are not wrong. You are not wrong at all. And you are probably challenged with the fact that as a technical person in your organization, the project manager, the consultative people, they're not taking on a lot of these new technologies. They're not hiring a lot of the times a whole new department to take on these technologies. So guess what you get to do? You get to learn. And learn. And learn. And learn. And learn. And keep up with all of these things. I ran out of room on the slide. These are all things and all technologies I've had to use, work with, understand, and implement best practices in the past week. Most of the development companies I know call this an IT department. So if you're a developer in the room and you're going, I don't know how to keep up with all this, that's why, because you're being a department. So the challenge here is many of these things take organizational effort to really implement correctly. And that brings us to what we're going to be talking about today. One of the elements that we're going to look at implementing as an organization is the test framework. The test framework lets us do a bunch of things. But before I go too much further, because we've come a long way with testability. Those of you who remember 10 years ago, we didn't have all the tools to run the tests that we do today. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we have now, pipelines and testability, and it feels like extra effort, but it's not. It's good stuff. And so I wanted to just at least salute with this very delightfully ancient quote that's been paraphrased and attributed over and over again in different ways. But the original source of this is, "We are standing on the shoulders of giants." And so I just want to give a small nod to Luke in the audience. If you haven't read his book on testability, you should be. And if you know Luke, you also would know that I am also slightly making a height joke. Sorry. But when I'm talking about testability today, this is a cultivated process to take a set of preconditions, your starting data. You are going to apply a set of processes, verify that the process worked, and then you want to be able to repeatably do things. You want to be able to have those changes roll back. Now, if you're using the AL testing tools, most of this is handled for you, at least on the rollback side, by the test runners themselves. Pretty straightforward, and it's good stuff. So we're going to look at, you can change how you use testability code when you change the ingredients of this list. When you build a test app, you're bringing knowledge, you're bringing your generation of preconditions, you're running processes, and you're verifying results, and then theoretically, the AL framework is doing the rollback for you. That's good. That's pretty awesome stuff. I hope most of the people in the audience have at least experimented with writing test applications, if not embraced the beginning of doing that in their organization. So in theory, what we're hearing is that the modern development experience is that you're going to create solutions, whether they be for a specific customer or for app source, whatever have you. You theoretically are gathering your users, your stakeholders, your project team, and you're analyzing things. You're working through creating the testability requirements. Because testability requirements is just a short list of what will I do as a person trying this application to confirm that it works. That's a really good thing to do. And then theoretically, if you're doing ATDD, you then code to pass those requirements. I know a lot of people are hesitant to start down that path, but it's pretty useful. And then in the perfect world, you're also using pipelines to maintain, run those tests, to do deployments, all that stuff, whether it be to app source or directly to customer environments, whatever have you. So this is the modern process that I hope a lot of people, even if they're not doing yet, they're at least familiar with. That would be some of the good stuff. So now we have a shared foundation that we can jump off of. That's where we started from. That's what we're hearing about. There are great sessions here. I'm looking greatly forward to Vyska and Waldo tomorrow talking about interfaces and how they help testability. That's going to be fun. So let's talk about the overall implementation process. Again, using this older framework, we have our traditional test use, that there's some sort of customization that needs to happen for our internal stakeholders, for our customer, for our product. Well, we're going to assess those needs. We're going to create a set of tests that for that functionality that we are making, we are going to confirm that it works. Well, that's good. Absolutely. That makes sense. I like to do what is called smoke tests that test critical mission business processes from end to finish for my customers. One of the easiest ways that I have started getting customers to appreciate testability is I sit with them and I say, okay, you have 5 departments. Each of those departments, give me your top 10 list tomorrow that if BC made that process die, so would your business. Well, that kind of wakes people up a little, and you can look at that and say, all right, I just want to make tests that take your sales quote, make a sales order, ship, pick, and make sure things can go out the door. Because you never want to find out that, oh, over the weekend, the next miner added a new feature, and now we can't ship. That's a bad Monday morning. I don't like those Monday mornings. Smoke tests help me do that. They confirm the mission-critical processes are working. So I hope there are some folks in the audience going, I do that. I hope so. That's a really great thing to do. Another scenario that is an easy place to start is in the support workflow. I like to make for a lot of my customers who have support cases a special testing app that all it does is test old tickets. Because if you've ever worked support, I'm sorry, but also you would have to have collected what was the expected results and what are the steps to reproduce. That's a test case right there. So you can very easily take any support tickets and go, this is a test. It's an opportunity to create some tests. I'm a married man. I don't know how many folks in the audience are also married to someone or someone's, whatever. But if you make a mistake at home, you say, I'm sorry. You make it better. Make that same mistake the second time. Boy, that I'm sorry better be a lot more sincere. Customers are people too. I know, sorry, take a moment to take that in. Customers are people too. If you apologize for something and then do it again 2 weeks later, how much angrier are they? Support apps that do testability against old tickets means that you never reintroduce the same bug. And boy, is that a nice, easy thing to not make a customer angry. It doesn't make anyone excited. If you're sitting in a team meeting going, I would like to make sure we don't make our customers furious, they go, could you go get the water? It's not exciting, but exciting is also being yelled at on the phone. But there's also scenarios that some of my customers who are ISVs love to do, and I love this so much. I've helped a few customers architect these solutions. Make an app that diagnoses all of the setup information in a customer's live environment. Are they missing number fields? Are they missing critical setup? Make a toolkit that you can say, okay, we added some critical mandatory field on the customer card that has to be filled in or you can't do sales operations. Well, you can make a diagnostic app that goes through all of their customers in a sandbox and says, are all of those filled in? No, I see there's a potential risk and a potential problem. You can build diagnostic apps using testability to say, where are the potential problems? And my favorite part about that is if you do that and you put that in AppSource along with the solution itself, that means that customers who are the kind of customers who like to be able to self-solve can run this before they call you. In your first emails to people, it can be an auto response of, have you tried running the diagnostic apps to find common solutions? And by putting this into AppSource with all of these common FAQ style problems, well, you can grow that over time, just as you do your main app. Every time you get new problems that you've seen time and time again, add a diagnostic to it. Why not? You can do lots of fun stuff with that. You can create JSONs of logs and all sorts of things. And then, of course, we get into all the fun and exciting stuff about pipelines. I talk about them all the time. I'm not going to do it too much today, but please tell me, most people here are using pipelines. Okay. A few people humored me. Thank you. So the other bright side to adding pipelines to the mix is all of those different proactive, reactive tests, those smoke tests, you can run them in advance. You can run them on a scheduled basis. You can set it up so that they run on a weekly against next minor, next major. You can go, I know there's a new major version of BC around the corner. I would like to find out via an automated email out of DevOps that there is a problem coming. I do not want to find out that there is a problem with my solution via the warehouse manager going, I can't get this shipment to go through and the truck is leaving in 5 minutes. You don't want to get the email from Microsoft saying the environment couldn't be upgraded. or worse, your application was uninstalled. Those are bad days. So looking at this older style framework, we just helped a whole bunch with the customized process. We are able to validate that the customizations work. That's good. We potentially have helped solve support cases and make them stay solved. That second part is real important, stay solved. And we found a way to even do some preventative things. We can test in advance. Hopefully some of those are at least not news to people here. The bad news, we did make analysis worse. Sorry about that. The small good news is that analysis is something you do as a team. That shouldn't necessarily be a developer-only job. It should not be. It should be things that consultants, project managers, both client side, internal stakeholders, all these different people should be helping with the analysis. But I will admit, what we're doing is making analysis take a little more effort. So I put a red X on that because we didn't make it easier. We didn't make it gentler. We made it better, but we did make it more work. However, one of Luke's great things that he talks about is the money you spend on analysis and testing and making sure things are right. Later on, if you spend the time and effort to do that as support cases, it's a lot higher. We were talking in our workshops earlier this week, if you do not architect your solutions in a good way, you're building technical debt. And the metaphor I use for that is you are putting your development effort on a credit card. And boy, are the interest rates rough on that. And each and every month when there's a new major and a new minor, you take that credit card statement and you throw it away. We don't need it. Okay. Eventually, when you hit a big roadblock, the technical debt interest is going to be more significant. So bear that in mind. But we haven't touched sales. And I know we're mostly a technical conference here. I'm sorry for those of you. I'm going to be scary and say we should help salespeople. Sorry. But salespeople need to demonstrate complex processes and features. Hopefully you guys are out there building cool stuff. Well, the salespeople need to know how to show off that cool stuff. Trainers who are working with the salespeople need to show people how to use that cool stuff. But salespeople also have an interesting challenge. I don't know how many of you have been in the field doing demonstrations. I have. Have you ever met with, say, a fish company and tried to show them Cronus? It doesn't really relate for them. It takes a lot of mental effort for them to go, I see how selling units of furniture relates to my business that at 4 in the morning I'm getting up with my crew and we're filleting salmon. It's a bit of a reach to ask customers to do during a sales process. So, it is Tech Days. We do need to do some demonstrations, right? So let's do a demo. I have built, and this is going to be available on GitHub. It is right now on the GitHub for Sparebrained Ideas, Sales Demo Helper. And you are welcome to use this as inspiration for your own solutions. And what this is using the ideas of testability. We're wanting to remember testability is generate baseline, apply process, validate the process, roll things back. Well, in a sales operation, wouldn't it be really cool if you had better baselines to do demonstrations on? So for example, one of the ones I made here in this little demo helper is a toolkit here for salespeople to say, what do you want to demonstrate to an end user today? Well, I don't know about you, but if you try to build a Power BI against Cronus data to show sales trends, those 5 orders don't help. So, I got asked the question, could we, theoretically, using the tools of testability, say, we would like more orders? And the zoom on this is pretty intense. Let's zoom that up a little bit. It's a big screen. I think folks can cope. So what we've said is we would like to be able to create 30 orders per month, but we also need some historical data. We need some posted transactions. So let's make 20 invoices per month, and we're going to be doing some demonstration for the first half of the year, so let's make the date range there. And what is some of the variability we would like to have on the item quantity. Because after all, if every single month we're doing transactions where we sell 10 items, 10 items, 10 items, that's not a very interesting Power BI. That's not a very interesting analysis tool. And we can say, I would like to grab these 3 different customers, because domestic, foreign, EU, we want to see some transactions against different posting groups. And we can also come on down here and say, well, which items do we want to have involved? I would like to have all 5 of these on these different orders. Okay. And we hit Run Helper. And those of you who are used to doing some of the operations in BC can already guess a little bit at what's going on right now because of all the nice little pop-ups that we're getting. I didn't suppress them because I think it's fun to see it. But what this does is it takes all those parameters, and that quickly, now we've got some rich test data. So if I'm going to go show my customer, what does it look like when you've got a good volume of sales orders? Well, here's a bunch. And I want to potentially see some sales invoice to see the history data. Well, here's a bunch scattered across time. And if we look into the details of just one of these, we'll see that it grabbed all those different items and it threw some different amounts, just randomly, grabbed some different things. And that's not too complicated to accomplish if you think about what's actually happening behind the scenes here. In the customer data generation, we can make use of some of the testing libraries to make this nice and easy code for us to run. So looking at the logic that we're doing here, we have some things where we're loading up the settings values. You can crawl through the code later. I'm not going to give a line-by-line analysis of this. But the key idea here is for each customer, we're going to look to see, for each month, we want to generate sales orders if that's been asked for, and we'd like to generate sales orders if that's been asked for. And all the generate sales orders is doing is it's taking a significant advantage of this library right here, library sales. Library sales has some functions on it, create header, create sales line. Because we don't really care too much about the data that's on it. We need there to be some data. We just need there to be some data. Okay, well, I don't know about you, but I really do get tired of creating the sales header line by line. It's about 12 lines to make a good sales header. It's about another 8 or 10 lines to create a sales line. Here it's 1. Nice and easy. The same is true for our posted sales invoices. We just do the same exact logic, except at the end, we also just call a little post function. There are a bunch of libraries in the testing framework that allow us to take advantage of the testability suite to run things. But you might ask the question of, well, if you're using all these test libraries, how come the data is still present in the database? Well, for those of you who caught on, you're ahead of the game a little bit, but if you look at the AL test tool and what it does when it's running things, hopefully most of you have seen this, but some of you might have glossed over one of the key fields here, is up in the header for each of these sections, we define what test runner is running all of the tests for us. This is the default setting. It's called isolated code unit. Hopefully most people know what the isolation options are and what they mean, but in short, test runners run test code. And at the end of the code unit, hence the name, at the end of the code unit, it's going to roll back the transactions. So in our sales demo helper, we create our own little tiny test runner, which is a rarely used in the field subtype here, test type, test runner. And most importantly, we flag a little property that is only valid on test runners that I'm aware of. Test isolation equals disabled. What this means is that when we're all done, don't do the rollback. I'd like that data to live. So obviously you'd not want to do this in production, but this allows you to generate lots and lots of data using the testability scripts, using the test tools, and don't roll it back at the end. That's fine. I'm perfectly content with polluting the database. Because traditionally, if a test doesn't roll back, that's polluting your tests. It's making the next run dirty because your data is no longer the same. Well, in this case, we want that dirty data. We're making it on purpose. That is the whole point. And you could do some other fun stuff because I did mention that one of the challenges when you're showing a fish company, for example, that BC is relatable for them, well, what can you do to make things more relatable? I've worked with salespeople in the past to create demo scripts and all that sort of thing, and what they've done is they typically will follow some sort of script, but they will follow a setup script, and they're sitting there working with a BC container these days. Back in the day, they would work with a installation on their local machine, and they would painstakingly sit down and create all the items that would be more relatable for their customer. So for our given fish company, they would make a whole bunch of new items, salmon, cod, shrimp, all those different things. So at least there's something in the database that they can put on a sales order that will make more sense to the customer. Well, go figure, we could go ahead and do some more with that. So I took this example where I wanted to create some new item numbers in my system, and this little setup configuration says, okay, well, we want this number, we want the name, we want these different units of measure, they want to show off some of the different unit of measure functionality, and we want some standard settings across all those. They use FIFO in this environment, or we want to be able to demonstrate effectively the difference between standard costing on one fish versus FIFO, and for some ungodly reason, we really want to show them average costing. There are some horrors there. But creating the items quickly is nice and all, but when you go to add them to a sales order, how are you going to show them item availability? By period, by location, any of those things. How are you going to show what's available on the item card? You can't do that. That's just this is just going to create the items. Well, we can add some additional settings, and I did so as part of this demonstration toolkit, where we can say, you know what? I want you to go back in time and create some stock settings for this as well. I want you between the 1st and the 6th of June, every 2 weeks, I want you to create some noise. I want you to add some positive adjustments that bring in that data. And additionally, on top of that, we're going to want to demonstrate order promising maybe against some purchase orders coming in. So I also say, all right, let's also add on here all of these different purchase settings. And we can say that every 3 weeks, we want to order some various amount from this vendor. Okay, no problem. We run the helper. It goes ahead and it creates all the items first. And then, as you can guess by the pop-up that's happening right now, we're doing some posting. It's posting some item journal lines. Okay, well now if we head off to our item list, we can see, slowly but surely, we can see those now exist, and it has inventory. This is a lot easier of a technique that if your salespeople are needing to spin up a new sandbox to demonstrate to a partner in 5 minutes, oh no, they're here, can I make this make more sense? They're a car company. Whatever have you. Whatever you need to do to make this more relatable, you can speed that along. And you can have lots more info. We can see that this item, not only is there a bunch more in stock, but there's a whole bunch of purchase orders created for that. So you can see over time that there's incoming quantities of different amounts. This allows you to build a lot more data to show a customer what does it really look like, not what does it look like when there are 5 purchase orders in the system. That's hard to relate to for a lot of customers, I find. So the logic to that, again, not very far off from what we've done before. If we look at the item generation logic, and we won't need to spend too much time on this, we're making use of the library inventory. And what we'll do, let me make that a little bigger here. What we'll do is we generate the item, and if we have some past stock settings, we'll go ahead and create an item journal entry, and we'll post the item journal. And if they have some purchase settings that are valid, because after all, it is a salesperson using this tool, maybe they messed something up, we go ahead and create some purchase settings, and we create the purchase documents. And these rely on standard libraries, and you do see I do have some assignment stuff, because we do want to validate some of the different fields and check all the work and everything like that. But if we look at our create purchase document, again, same thing. We have one nice easy line where we create the purchase order, we assign a few extra fields based on our settings, and then we create a purchase line with that item. No big deal. You don't have to do the work. You don't have to rely, even with Copilot's help, since we've been hearing a lot about that, even with Copilot's help, we can do stuff in one line here. It's a lot easier. So using the testability tools, you can create demonstration starters that make it easier for salespeople to relate that information to their customers. You can also make the system make more sense to a different audience. I appreciate Kronos for what it is, but it is better to speak to the customer where they live. Many of you in the room are creating solutions that are specific to you. There's no way in the world that Kronos can help demonstrate the cool stuff you've just added to Business Central. So make your own. Make your own cool stuff. Just to give an example, because it's nice to have some real-world examples, and I'll bravely wander off to the internet. If you look at Contoso Coffee, if we look at Contoso Coffee Business Central, you may have heard of this already. You may not have. Microsoft's doing that exact same thing. Here on the Docs website, we have this introduction to Contoso Coffee demo data. If you look, there are walkthroughs of I need to learn the basics of if you set up the basic warehousing module, what does it actually look like to receive and ship inventory? What's involved in that? There is a companion app to this documentation that generates all of the data that this documentation relies on. It affectionately has been referred to as part of the bloatware ecosystem. But if you create sandboxes, you will often find there is a Contoso Coffee application installed in your sandbox. That's what that is. It's an app that goes along with these documentations that you can go in here following this documentation step by step, and this bin exists. This item exists. There are values for these things. So Microsoft is an example of the kind of company that is going, you should be able to take documentation and have your data match it. You should be able to move forward with that. Additionally, besides the fact that, as I said, we are taking the starting data, we're applying the process, we don't need to verify the results are the results, whatever they are, and we don't need to roll back the changes. That's cool. But we can do training off of this. This is a really fantastic way to prep classroom environments. For those of you who are doing online training, you're doing workshops, you're doing seminars over and over again to teach people how to use this product, well, wouldn't it be great to just have an app that sets all of that environment up in one go? Wouldn't it be better that the initialization process of preparing that environment for the environment was something that was part of a pipeline or an app that you can just run? It's fantastic, and you can make the documentation make sense. Additionally, those of you who are creating your product, odds are pretty good that there are partners out there that you're hoping are selling your solution. You're hoping that their salespeople know how to demonstrate your cool stuff. That's a lot of hope. I don't like relying on hope. It's great. I like holding hope, but I don't like building my plans on hope. So by building these testability demonstration toolkits, the documentation to go along with it, you can even do things like I did here in the demonstration toolkit, where in the sales, you can give links to your website to open the demo script, open the slide deck to go with it. You can help the people who are trying to demonstrate this that maybe, because you're on AppSource, you don't even know who the partners are. So give them this, so that way they have something to go on. Make them able to see some of the best stuff. And then, of course, there are plenty of folks who are customers, who are savvy, who are smart folks. I suspect there are a few of you here today. That makes you very savvy customers if you're here today. But those folks are able to install stuff from AppSource and figure it out themselves. Well, do you think if you're making a product for AppSource that a customer right now today, they can hit try it now, are they going to get the best experience they can? Maybe. But wouldn't it be cool if they can install a companion app that you can recommend that says, would you like me to initialize your sandbox so you can see how it all looks? A place where you will find Microsoft doing that. I love it a whole bunch. For those of you who have been to some of the telemetry sessions, looking at the Power BI app for telemetry, one of the great things Kenny did, he did the same thing. He creates sample data in the app that even before you hook up the Power BI app to your telemetry environment, you can see what it would look like. That's pretty powerful. So make it simple. So we've now helped the salespeople out, which I know that's not exciting for some folks here. I'm sorry. But we also bopped a little bit of an extra bonus check mark into training. So that's pretty cool. But what about the implementation part? Well, implementation, I don't know how many developers have also done implementations by themselves, but hopefully at least some of you have participated in implementations and seen how it goes. The person in charge of implementing for a customer has to manage lots and lots of setup information. I love Business Central, I do. It has a lot of settings. You can go wrong very easily with a lot of settings. This is why a lot of times you will hear people say you should set up controls, permissions, changelog on setups, because one checkbox can throw off your whole business. And then of course, if you're migrating from an old system into Business Central, you're managing a whole bunch of new data coming into the system. Who knows how right it is? You hope it's pretty good, especially if you're dealing with customers, vendors, items, critical master data. You potentially are dealing with thousands and thousands of records. I've absolutely migrated someone from another system that had 6,000 customers, 9,000 vendors, and well north of 10,000 items that they all transact. All of those are real and valid transactionable master data records. That's a lot of information to check. You also have to test dozens and hundreds of operations and permutations of operations. I'm going to ship with this. I'm going to ship partial. I'm going to receive partial. Oh, and now we also have some over-shipping functionality, under-receiving. There's many different permutations. We've got 3 different warehouses, and they have different levels of warehousing set to them. That's a lot of testing for your customer to do, never mind your implementation team. So let's help them out a little bit. Let's take a different way of thinking about things, because after all, we talked about how testability is taking a set of preconditions, applying a process, validating results, and rolling back. Well, we are trying to build our test database where we're migrating information into that test database. Guess what? That's our baseline data. So if we look at what I've built here as a go live checklist example, there's a lot of scotch tape holding this together. If we look at this, here's a really basic set of examples. We want to make sure that some of the different posting setups are populated. We want to make sure a real simple one, common sort of thing with new people who are using Business Central, you have all of your income statement accounts, you have all your balance sheet accounts, or vice versa, depending on your country. Well, it's real easy when you insert a new one in the middle of all your expenses to forget to swap that from balance sheet to income statement, and things go a little nutty. So how do you know for sure that all of your GL accounts are set to the right thing? That's a really easy thing for us to check, but let's take a look at what we could do to check that. Well, we can have a little testability code unit that says, all right, it's hard-coded here, but we could absolutely do this with some cool parameter tricks. And I'm going to be updating this demonstration to show how as part of the fall updates to these things. But in my customer environment, everything up to $599 should be balance sheet. Everything after $6,000 should be income statement. So I want to run my selected tests here, and it will go through and check all of that data and go, okay, well, there are 270 GL accounts. 266 of them are set correctly, 4 of them are not. Whoops. Well, that's cool. So here, what we're doing is we are verifying the data using the testability. Just as we did before, we have a code runner, test runner here, but we are leaving that test isolation on its default setting, which is we definitely want to roll back anything we change. The reason we're doing this with a custom test runner, for the people who really love the whys and everything behind the scenes, we run our own test runner so we can capture the errors and present them. So that's a really basic example. Sure, like just check, we could effectively do this with a filter. It's not a very exciting example, but here's where we start to get a little bit more exciting. When you're migrating customer data, you theoretically know how many customers should be blocked or unblocked, for example. Coming from an old system, we want to have 6,000 customers. We know 100 of them are presently blocked. Well, did those migrate incorrectly? Not yet. Okay. We can see that in this particular case, we can run this selected test. It will go through the operations. And again, we're doing something a little bit simple here, that we're making sure that the data is valid. This could be done with a filter. Sure, we could do some basic counting and all that sort of thing. But we can also do operations where theoretically, as part of this, for each and every customer, we can check, are the posting groups right? Are they within expectations? And importantly, as part of using testability, you can run test transactions. So we could say, for each of these customers, can we ship them items? I personally, if we're importing 6,000 customers, would really like to know that we can transact on each and every one of those 6,000 customers. Because otherwise, you're hoping. And again, I don't really like hope to be in the mortar of the foundation of the project. I think there's a lot more that we can do with validating these things. So these are example tests where we can, for each and every customer of the system, we write up a sales order, we ship them items. We want to receive cash from them. We want to make sure we can issue credit memos to them. Make sure that these are all working correctly. And additionally, this is based off of real-world examples. Item journal, positive adjustments. I mentioned a customer that had over 10,000 items and they were bringing in lots of stuff. When you're first getting a system started, you need to create all the beginning balances. Well, that means that you've got a whole bunch of item journals that have to be created to bring in those beginning balances, of course. Well, the day before the go live, one of the location managers went, "We label all of our shelves. Those seem like bins to me." And he went to the location card and went, there's a really cool option on here called bin mandatory. Uh-oh. There are at least a few people in the room who realized what went wrong real fast, because no longer could any of those item journals post. All the bin codes were blank. So what we can do here is, as part of our item tests, we can run a positive adjustment in a testing scenario for every single item in the system, for every location in the system. And that's not too hard. It's really basic code when you think about it. It's just the idea is a little bit different. So if we look at our positive adjustment test here, we say for each location, we go through each item, and we create an item journal line. And if that goes correctly, then let's also try to post it. And so this will catch cool stuff too, like, can we create the journal line for that item? Because if we can't, I really want to know that too. So we'll capture that information, and we add that to our list of errors. Now, the advantage to all of this is that this is all an app file, which means that, guess what? You can set all of these tests to run as part of a scheduled pipeline. So as you are getting closer and closer to your go live, guess what you can do? You can check the data, you can use those pipelines to revalidate, but importantly, you can answer with certainty, how close are we to actually ready? You can check every day to go, did some guy turn on bin mandatory? Did someone delete the sales order numbers field in sales and receivable setup? Absolutely, you can turn on changelog setup and find out those things after the fact. That's great for diagnostics afterwards. But if you create tools like this and you run tools like this as part of your implementation, hope isn't one of the critical points in your foundation. So, as mentioned, we're dropping the starting data, and we just apply the process, verify the results, and roll back the changes. So now, we've helped the implementation process. Cool. That's a lot of fun. There's a bunch of different good news, bad news off of this. The good news on this is that right from the get-go, even in the sales part of the process, the first time the customer is ever interacting with you, testability has been brought to the table in some small way. The earliest point of contact with a business life cycle in your organization now understands that automation, which is what testability is built on, automation has value to them. And if you are building testability to test the data to validate an implementation, that means that you are validating the data every step along the way. And customers are seeing how careful you are about their business operations. Because after all, you're the doctor operating on the patient is their business. If the patient doesn't make it, it's a bad day for everyone. So it's much, much easier to make the case that when they ask for customization, guess what? We should do just like we did during the implementation and make sure. Hope should not be part of the equation. We should make sure. The bad news now, unfortunately, you get more to do. So the challenge with adding, okay, in the sales process, in the implementation process, we want to write all this cool new code. Most of you in the room, I'm guessing, are already going, I already have to write a lot of code. You already showed us a slide of how much I'm not even getting to write the code anymore. So I feel bad about that. So to make things a little bit better, as an apology, I am introducing a project that is going to be released by fall, tentatively, and is another open source tool that I hope will help people out a little bit with testability. So let's take a look at something a little bit fun. I haven't shown this off anywhere to anyone yet, so you guys are seeing it for the first time. I have a little tool that is starting to be put together. This is going to be an open source project that I am roping Stefan Marone into helping me with because he had some cool ideas to make this better. So what this does is let's take the default settings. It'll take a second just to initialize the database. I create these little packages. For those of you who have worked with config packages, this should look pretty similar. Here's a whole bunch of tables. Here's some of the different fields we want to have. And maybe we want to do some filters on things. Maybe we want to do some anonymization on these fields. Okay, but what does it do? Well, what we are able to do with this is I can click Generate, open this up. Look what we've got in this zip file for you. I heard some very quiet chuckling on that, and good. First of all, we get our wall of permission of all the different tables that are involved. But what we also get in this monstrous pile that we're looking at in Notepad for delightful reasons, but sure, we get a function call called createItem that is going to initialize, based on all those different fields that we want to have, all sorts of different parameters. But if we scroll on down to the very bottom here, what we get is this wonderful little thing. Let's turn off word wrap and make that a little more visible. We get a wonderful world where we're creating items. Creating item, creating item. This little toolkit lets you, for all of those different things that we've just talked about, for creating demonstration data, for creating testability solutions, this allows you to configure what is some of the information that you potentially would want to extract from an existing system. And it takes that information and it makes a code unit. And everything about this is handled, written for you, and just all you have to do is call run. So you take this little packet, you drop this into your existing testability pipelines, your sales demonstration helpers, whatever have you. You check this into source control, which is why we anonymize. And now you can go ahead and run these initialization routines. You can just march right through creating the data. Because after all, I like Copilot, I do. But I have customers that they need a customization that says, okay, over 5 years history, we needed the ability to identify spikes in demand. And that's the customization, is we're identifying spikes. Well, you can't do that off of 5 years of ledger entries using Cronus. You can't even generate 5 years of ledger entries very easily using config packages. But you sure can through code units. Absolutely can. So the idea behind this is very simple, is let's take some information, let's choose how to configure it, let's capture it. And you can add all sorts of different things, just like any config package would. You could have a custom package. As part of our workshops, we had a gift box solution that we had configured some demonstration company to build a good solution architecture around. I believe it was 76,000? No, 70,000 maybe. Let me grab our gift box. If we browse this, just like config packages, you can just grab anything that's in the system. Any tenant data, it doesn't matter. So we'll say, okay, we'll rename that, sure, no problem. I thought that worked. Okay. Validation issues. Not quite ready for prime time, but ready for preview. So we'll grab some related tables, and by default, we'll bring some of those fields in. If we look, we can choose, we can say we want to anonymize, we want to filter on things. You can do different filters on all sorts of stuff. So for example, as part of like the sales area where you're creating initialization routines, we might want to filter on the blocked field to say we don't want, I guess we're not searching on that. We can go ahead and say we want to filter on a specific language code or different currency codes, whatever have you. Those filters will be applied. So we can say that this should be filtering on blocked. There we go. Single quotes. Validates the filters, of course. No problem. And now we're going to filter the result set. So now this gift box package, if we want to generate just that one, we might have messed myself up with creating that 76,000 line first. Sure. So we'll grab those fields. We'll make sure they're in here. Great. Now we just generate that single code unit, open it up, and there we go. It's that fast and easy. And now this can potentially be part of my source control. So, I'm very much one of those people of if I'm going to give you presents, I'm going to explain how they work. So I'm sure there are some folks who are a little bit curious about what's going on here. And again, the code behind this is very simple. We have some basic packaging where we choose what tables are involved, we choose what fields are involved, and all that sort of thing. And then, as messy as this code is, it's also not very hard to read. It's meant to be very simple to read, first and foremost. We're going to create a zip archive, which I hope most folks are familiar with this utility library if you're a developer in the room, and someone's asking you, I want to have 3 PDF files download at the same time. This is how you do that. You create zip archives and stuff things in it. So in our zip archive, we're going to add an entry, and what we're adding is a created code unit. And for each of these created code unit calls, we add some basic code unit header, those create functions, we create the actual collection data, and we create the footer as a result of that. The header is a very straightforward, and I kept it simple, text builder, so you could read it looking through this and go, for my organization, I'm going to make a fork off this project. I want there to always be some extra stuff at the beginning. Okay, fork it, add some stuff here. It's super easy to adjust, to modify, all that fun stuff. The create functions, we'll go through and say, okay, well, we're going to create something for each table name. And again, we're just doing append line. And we're generating these little procedure names. And then we're passing in the parameters of all the different fields that are involved. That's all. Nothing too complicated, I would hope. I hope most people are going, oh, yeah, that's straightforward. Why didn't I think of that? I hope. And then we're doing some basic insert calls. And then finally, at the very end, we're doing some routines where we're creating the collection. And so this routine iterates through each of the tables, and based on the field settings, it creates a detailed line, and it says, okay, There are some different filters here. We'll apply those real quick. And running through each of the records, we want to go ahead and say, let's grab the field values. And it depends a little bit on currently a sort of if statement. I want to, next up, we'll be turning this into an interface, so that way we can have a wide array of implementations around what we want to replace the data with. But for a given code, text, date, time, all that sort of stuff, let's append that. Because after all, in AL code, you know that date formats have to be written differently. GUIDs have to be interpreted and evaluated, all that fun stuff. If it is anonymized, let's go ahead and run that through some Scrambler. The way that this behaves in its default form, if we are running it through an anonymization process for a whole bunch of different packages, let's say, for example, once again, our sales area, the way the anonymization works at the moment, and will be the default implementation, is we actually create a whole bunch of noise. You probably saw it as I scrolled past it. I love doing this, and the reason I love doing this is you get a free little code review of, did anyone forget to set description to 100? You get to find out a real quick way of, I missed one. Most of the time, I hope that your code cops and your pipeline are already warning you about these sort of things. But again, now, no hope. Hope is not a baseline object to work off of. So we'll be fiddling with this. We'll add some more anonymization routines to it. I was showing Freddie over break, there's a great service for making mock data. And I would love there be more methodologies for these different mocks. So this tool is something that we are going to be releasing pretty soon. And hopefully, these create some different scenarios for you to look at, to work through. As mentioned, the code data helpers that we were looking at before, sales demo helper, go live checklisting, these are public repositories. I'm going to continuously keep improving them. Right now, each of them has 3 or 4 example implementations. If you look at the source behind this, you'll see that they're relatively organized into different checklists that we might be working with and implementations. So if we look at item, we have items blocked, item positive adjustment. So there's some basic ones to get started. I want to add lots of these. And I'm hopeful that over the upcoming year or so, more and more of you will start seeing that there is value to this, and you might throw some pull requests in here. Go for it. Please do. I'm going to continue to expand this. I am working to do a second edition of Your First 20 Hours. I am going to expand this Go Live checklisting to be a companion to that and cover as many of those scenarios as I possibly can. And additionally, we have, of course, the sales demo helper. There are lots of different things. Sorry about that. I'm trying to go too many tabs. Brain too many tabs. The sales demo helper is also just public. So you can go ahead and work with this. I'm going to be expanding this, improving it, rewriting it, adding lots more things to it. As part of architecture design, you'll notice at the moment these are all just code units that are installing themselves into records and then are called. We're going to try to change that up and make it be more interface extension and that sort of thing. So hopefully that's a bit of an apology for creating the more work. So to recap some of the critical parts of this, what we're going for is think about all the discrete parts of testability. You're generating baselines, you're validating processes, you're applying processes, you're validating the process, and then you're rolling back the results. How can you put those together in new ways? It's a little bit like Legos. Yeah, it's a car kit, but that doesn't mean it has to be a car. So think of some different ways that you can play with that in your organization. What this does is it begins to involve more of your teammates in helping you build those test applications. Because if a salesperson understands that I can make better demos if I give you useful information about how to show the product at its best, well, then it becomes a lot easier in that product meeting in a month talking about how can we help our customers on board. you've already been having conversations now with your salesperson about how do we demonstrate the product in a good way. You're already developing the language, the habits, the integration between the different teams to get those different use cases. And it creates that understanding and culture of automation. Because one of the number one things I hear about testability is, I can't get anyone to authorize this because who's going to pay for it? Or I hear all the time, I don't have the time to implement these sort of things. Well, if these become part of the deliverable package that you're creating for AppSource, it's a lot easier to sit with a product manager and say, I need to spend time on testability. I need to grow my abilities with this toolkit. I need to develop those strengths. And it empowers your partners and customers, which is a fancy way of saying it involves them and makes them understand you guys are actually doing good work. So hopefully that makes a little bit more ease when you're starting to say, link for the GitHub, you guys saw that. And then additionally, I thought I actually had one more slide, but it has disappeared on me. So I guess the question is, are there questions? I'm between you guys and beer, so there's a little bit of interest in keeping the talk shorter, for sure. And I saw the first hand go up here.
You said you will fork the app for your organization because you want to add some things at the start. Why are there any events used?
Let me come a little closer because I didn't quite catch that.
I'm just wondering why you didn't use any events and just subscribe to your functions and then add your stuff beforehand. So
absolutely, because it's a first draft. One of the things that I encourage a lot of my developers of, you can't edit an empty page. You can't make a great second version until you've made a first version. Your first 20 hours, I wrote that in 30 days. It was less than a month from beginning to end, and it's about 500 pages. And that is because I needed to get a first edition to exist. I needed to find out, how does it help people, how does it improve people? So those right now are proof of concepts. They're inspirational pieces. They're not something that I could sit with a customer today and put this into their environment and start using, because there's a lot of things that need to be tailored to it. But you're absolutely correct that they need more events. They need interfaces, they need enums, they need some love. But what I'm hoping is that between now and next year's Tech Days, there will be a significant number of improvements to make there be a whole bunch of stuff that you can just use it right out of the box. Because it's free, it does get to go into the spare time category, of which many of you know, we all have copious spare time. So, short throw.
Had you have a chance to look into generative AI to generate these data instead, to have a more rich experience with what kind of fish, for example, I have? So if I tell the AI I need a demo data for the fishing company, and please pick 5 fish and generate it for me?
That is a fantastic question. So if anyone didn't catch that, and just making it clear for the recording and everything, the question was, did I think about potentially making use of AI to help do some of these generation pieces? So for example, in our sales demo helper, we've got some basic mechanics in here that say we want to create something relatable data. Well, what if your sales guy doesn't know the relatable data? What if you are going to demo to someone and you don't know what would make sense? Or you would just like to be efficient with your time and say, make 50 fishes for this. Not at present, but that's mostly just been the tempo of AI. I was discussing that with someone upstairs. January 1, most of us have not considered AI as part of our daily life. That's a really intense tempo for us to keep up with, for sure. However, one of the areas where we do see significant value from AI at the moment, since we're talking testability, my junior developers that I hand testability scripts to and I hand a first functional test to, testability is extremely repeatable code. It's very repetitious in that you're trying many different permutations. AI is phenomenal for writing testable code. I had a junior dev who, over the course of a day, might write 10 tests from scratch based on the scripts I handed him. On one day, he went from 10 tests, I gave him GitHub Copilot as a try this for me. The second day, he wrote 100. And they were all good because there was already a baseline of testable code. So where I would love to go is in some of these tools that potentially we might want to create relatable service items. We want to create relatable items and stories and data to support those narratives. I think this is a phenomenal place to hook up to Azure OpenAI and say, I would like you to populate a toolkit like this for me with a whole bunch of demonstration settings, run those tools against that setting. And that would be fairly easy to populate by passing just functions as a parameter. And then Copilot could certainly help with that. I think the OpenAI ecosystem will be a little bit better for generating those story data than Copilot, since Copilot knows code. But I absolutely want to go in that direction. For those of you who haven't made AI part of your life as developers, little ways that helps. I had a workshop earlier this week where I needed to create 15, 20 different extensions to demonstrate multi-application architecture. Well, if you did that one by one with ALGo, I'd be there all morning. It takes a while. I'd be opening and closing workspaces left, right, and center. So I created a little CSV that said, okay, for this application name, for this prefix, for this start object ID, end object ID, I took that CSV file, went to ChatGPT equivalent. I'm not going to say which one, but I went to a ChatGPT equivalent, and I said, I need a PowerShell that reads a CSV file structured like this. I need it to copy an app.json, a settings.json. I need it to create the folders for me. I needed to update those JSON files with the values from the CSV. Go. It gave me a PowerShell script. Within 5 minutes of me being done creating the CSV, I then had a multi-application framework of all these different apps all set up probably about 5-10 minutes later. So there are great opportunities, whether it be testability stuff and demonstration data and all those sort of things, or even just normal operation. There are great opportunities to make use of AI in that space. I often will make comparisons of, many of you seen different sci-fi movies like Edge of Tomorrow and whatnot, where soldiers are wearing mechanized suits of armor. AI is like that. They're the mech suits of armor right now. If you're a moderately good or very good soldier, you can do so much more because you're so much faster, stronger, etc. But if you're a complete novice, you might do faster, better, stronger, or you might end up at really high speeds upside down in a ditch. So it's a little 50-50. You need to be thoughtful if you're working with junior developers about how they're embracing it because of that safety check. So to bring it all back to that question, I absolutely think this will be a wonderful opportunity to do AI-level demo data generation. So I will be looking at that to be able to say, you know, some of these different demonstration scenarios that I have listed here, I know what stuff needs to be populated. I provide lots of defaults. It's just missing a few bits of information. Go ask for those few bits of information. I think that would be a super cool way to do things. Ooh, closer.
Thank you. Do your tools rely on specific Chronos data, especially localized and language-related data?
An excellent question. This comes up an awful lot when it comes to demonstration and testability. Does this rely on localizations? Does this rely on Chronos? Any of those sort of fun things. The toolkits that I have been showing today, the sales demo helper, the sales demo helper relies on whatever settings are in your environment. For example, here, this relied on whatever customers are present. It doesn't care how those are set up. This is built against Worldwide 1. It doesn't care what customers are present. It just asks you as a user to select them, and it's going to use them. If your database is blank, there won't be anything present to select. So some of these tools rely on a Cronus or an existing set of data to work with for the sales demo helper. For the go live checklisting, the entire point of that one is that you want to check the data that the customer has. So this relies not on any of the settings that come from Cronus or Worldwide 1 or any of the things. It relies entirely on whatever data is present at the time. So that is a much easier sort of infrastructure. It can rely on anything. And then the baseline generator, the gift present here, this is harvesting data from whatever is present in the system. It does not care about what localizations, it does not care about what data is present. It could be an empty database you then create a couple of settings in, does not matter. Because this question comes up a lot in testability. When I'm creating tests, should I build tests against a blank database or should I build tests against Cronus? And as my frequent co-host Kemal has talked about, if you build against Cronus, now you're dealing with all sorts of localization problems. You're going to have to build tests for each of the different regions that your Cronus is operating in. So if you want to make a very region-safe solution to do demonstrations, to do implementations, to do testability using the generation toolkits, in a perfect world, you're building against an empty database. And that's a big part of why I wanted to make the baseline generator, is because building against an empty database is a lot of work. I've done it, it's not fun. I don't know how many developers in the room go, oh good, I get to set up 250 GL accounts just so I can validate that I can ship. That's not my favorite. So part of this is because I'm lazy. One of the ways that you can be lazy is by being more efficient. And any opportunity I have to be more efficient, and I can give that efficiency to everyone else, let's do that. And that's one of the reasons that I really love making tools like this that just help me do my job. There's no IP involved in this. This isn't a product. There's no way in the world I could sell this as a product, but it's a toolkit that allows me to do my job faster. And it's a toolkit that I think will help other people do their job faster. And those sort of things, the more we can create open source repositories like that on GitHub, the more we can create that, and the more we can convince our managers to let us have the time to work on those tools, the more we can get done, the more we can help each other get done. We had a great question in my workshop that ties into that question of how do you estimate things? Which is a challenging question. Lots of people ask that. And I told them, well, one of the things I do is I write down discrete operations. I'm making a setup table and a setup page. That's a discrete operation. I'm making a document. Okay, that's a header, a line table. I'm making a list. I'm making a card. I'm making a sub page. I'm maybe making a couple of fact boxes. That's a discrete operation. I write all those down, how long it takes me to do those things, and now I know what my baseline is. Well, when you're sitting down with your product manager and you go, I found a cool tool that 20% of my discrete operations that take me 4-6 hours, if I start using this tool, those 20% go down to 1 hour. You can do the math real easy. Over a year, how much time do tools like this save me? Oh, this would save me every year 72 hours. Well, isn't it worth giving me 16 hours for a couple days, maybe in a couple weeks? Trick for you if you're asking for things. If you ask beyond a couple of weeks, it's beyond the 2-week horizon. People are more likely to say yes. I would like a couple of days in 3 weeks so that if I spend 16 hours, I will be 72 hours a year less doing the same work. That's a fun thing to say. So it becomes much easier to go, if I spend a little bit of time, I can shave off some time, I can make open source tools, or there's an open source tool like the baseline generator that almost does what we need. if I can spend a day just adding a couple things to it, it changes everything we can do today in our organization. We can make much cooler apps on AppSource. We can make it easier for our customers to onboard. We can make a diagnostic tool so that instead of me spending 24 hours per quarter on did you click this setting in setup, instead of spending 24 hours per quarter asking that question, I would like to spend 4 hours in 3 weeks. I would like to spend 4 hours in 3 weeks making a little diagnostic app that just checks, is this set? And if it's not set, goes, would you like that to be set? You can make a lot of these noisy little bad uses of your time start to shrink down. So hopefully, that was a very yammering down the corridor answer to your question of does this rely on any baseline? But no, it does not. I think last round he had this, so I'll ask here, and then let everyone go to get beer.
Do we just use BC to generate data and call the API, or is there a better way to do it?
I will actually decline to answer this question during this session because there is a phenomenal answer to that question in a session tomorrow. And I would hate to go on record and be recorded answering a question Vyska and Waldo are about to take on.
Okay.
That feels like inviting some strong heckling, and I'm just glad they're busy prepping for tomorrow and not here to sass me for it.
What's the main use for the extraction of the data? Is it so you can input it in your Docker with the automated testing specific for a customer, or how is it used?
An excellent question. So the question, just to make absolutely sure that was caught, is what is the main purpose of the data extraction tool? Is this meant for developers to work with Docker environments? Is it meant to be used in pipelines? And the answer to that is both. In a perfect world of development, you're having a production environment. You might have a sandbox environment where the users are doing their testing and acceptance. You might have development environments where you're doing the integration of all the different changes that you're making. But also, hopefully, you have your own little private space that you're doing your development work in. Well, sometimes the change requests that you're getting, you can't develop that in a vacuum. You know, I gave the example earlier of one of my customers' customization relies on 5 years of ledger entry history so that they can do year-over-year comparisons and basic trend graphing and all that sort of thing. Well, testing that in a Docker without some sort of baseline information would be near impossible. So by using a data extraction tool like this and choosing to pull all of their information out of that key ledger that they're trying to bring information out of, I'm able to then put that into a code unit that it runs automatically on install. The on-install trigger actually calls all of these data generation code units. So the minute I hit publish on my test app to go alongside that application that I'm developing for them, it generates all the test data, and now I can either run tests against that test data, or I can manually go into the product and do all the different settings. I can see that the visuals are coming up correctly, that maybe the charts are displaying correctly in my Docker environment. And then hopefully, if you've gotten to that level of sophistication that you're working with Dockers with all this generated data on your local machine, you hopefully also have pipelines that, because I have that scenario where I need this complex pile of data to test against, I would want to generate all that data. And I talked to a few folks in industry about that, including Microsoft folks here at the conference, and there was a lot of excitement at the potential use of this in pipelines. So we might see some fun collaboration stuff on this. Since it is open source, people can do whatever they want to help this along. Just as, again, caveat emptor, this is a data extraction tool, just like config packages. Be thoughtful in how you're using that. You are mass exporting data, and you are creating code units that are checked into repositories. So do be careful with checking that you're not exporting customer secret information, you're not doing GDPR violations. One of the to-do items before I even make this live is to look at the field classifications to anonymize the data if it is set to GDPR flagged, so that the default behavior is always safe and you have to go out of your way to choose wrongly. But hopefully that answers the good question of, what is your goal out of this? And the goal out of this is you should be able to take a customer environment and with a Docker, take an empty database, install this initialization app, and now you have a fully functional environment with all your posting setups, you've got all your ancillary supporting data, you've got all your master data, and now you can just transact. And the important part for me on that, I've written app after app over the past year, 2 years, that did that sort of testing against an empty database. And you spend a lot of time generating all the underlying data. That's, even with Copilot's help, that's not a good use of my time. That's not a good use of whether it's the customer paying for it or me paying for it. That time is being consumed. It's not a good use. So the hope was that we should be able to do development the right way against an empty database without having to sit there. Okay, create the gen posting setup, create the currency, create the location, all that stuff. All right, well, I think that would be a good stopping point for today. We're only a few minutes short, but this does give you a head start that if you want to make it downstairs into some lines before all the other rooms, I gave you a head start. So, thank you, everyone.